So I don't know how many of you were able to grab one of the programs on your way in, but there's a little blurb in there about the birth of this event. And so 25 years ago marks the birth of the first annual Genesys Venture Dinner. And it began with Jim Kollegger, CEO and president of Genesys Partners, who I will welcome to the stage in a little bit. He brought 60 brilliant minds under one roof, and the purpose was to ideate, to forge connections. It was beyond swapping business cards. It was about building bridges in an industry that was, on the precipice of unparalleled growth, and it was a very new information technology industry. And Jim filled the rooms with the pioneers. So he has continued to bring great minds together under one roof for decades with his dinners, and in these past 4 years with these wildly successful mock trial debates that have just allowed us to deepen the discussion and create real discourse around the issues that matter today. And I really believe that, as a member of a different generation from Jim's, I really value being in a non-digital space with other human beings, no matter how many are in the room, because I think it's so valuable. And I've learned from Jim firsthand. I was his executive assistant, then helped him run operations at Genesys. I learned that this really is an industry about people, and it's an industry about the network. And as Jim says, let me get to this exact quote. It's very simple, but it's very great. He says, "People are where it's at." And that is really true. People are where it's at. He says that the world is becoming an ever more dangerous place where we need these stronger relationships more than ever before among our players, among our tribes. It's important that we gather together with people who do have an ethic, who do stand for things in a time where some people don't really stand for much, or they do so very blindly. So this mock trial that we had tonight is a way for us to dig deep into our preconceived notions of what we think to be true and hear from our peers and exchange words across a dinner table over some wine. It helps. The dinner at the Plaza 25 years ago was so profound because you could peer into the future. And the information and publishing industry you didn't know what was going to happen, and nothing ended up being the same. And I feel personally like I have no idea what I'm either going to read on the news tomorrow, what type of technology is going to come out that's going to completely change my lifestyle. And so I feel like events like this, I really believe that events like this are a way for us to take stock of where we are, where we're going, and how we're coping with what happens to be lifestyle changes often nowadays. So I would like to bring Jim up to the stage if he could say a few words, and while he makes his way here, just a brief introduction to honor him. He's CEO of Genesys Partners, the visionary of this evening, has been for 25 years. During his nearly 30-year history in the industry, Jim has helped launch, fund, and advise dozens of early-stage companies, such as Wave Systems, the NASDAQ WaveX, Hollywood Stock Exchange, Courtroom Connect, Encata, Ingram Entertainment, Hot Office, Novel, etc. The list goes on and on. He was also founder and CEO of EIC Intelligence, one of the industry's first database publishers, which sold to Reed Elsevier in '88. He is a pioneer of the digital information industry, helping to build the industry association, now SIAA, which named him their first Entrepreneur of the Year. Jim is a beloved friend of many, mentor, leader, inspiration to so many people. And I'm fortunate to have been his professional sidekick for years and his French martini drinking, oyster eating buddy. And so if you could give a round of applause for Jim Kollegger.
She's great. Quick footnote. Somewhere along in the last 6 months, I had an encounter with a bug, a tick, called it's called a Lone Star tick. It's a new species, new to the east here in the last 10 years. and it carries with it a thing called alpha-gal, which can kill you. So I got this bite about 6 months ago, and I think it's pretty well gone, but it keeps coming back, and we don't know the full extent of it. So right now, I took a pill, and this is a reaction to it, which is unexpected sometimes, but you have to kind of keep going through it. So I'm going to be very brief here, because I don't want you to just encrypt this message here. But one of the benefits I have of thinking and having more time, including superb discussions like yours, was when we prepared for this last session here, one of the most fascinating things was the way Ken Oletta and the team picked apart the threads of this whole issue of security, privacy, transparency. And it's a very complex issue, and it's really the tip of the iceberg, because most of it is down below. So to prepare for this, I actually went to the Hill and listened to congressional hearings, which C-SPAN's covered. In fact, it's ironic, because I didn't go to physically, I was actually watching on the television. But it was so compelling that I felt I was there. And the future that they were painting, in terms of what's coming down the line from facial recognition, abuse, mistrust, is just phenomenal. And the public hasn't got a clue how big this can be. And yet, when you have a benign dictator, everything's okay as long as it's benign dictators. When a non-benign dictator comes, you got to watch out here. And then, as part of the preparation for this, Ken and I were kicking on what could be the theme of this. What's the end result here? So I ironically enough, I remembered a line that I heard actually from a guy named Jerry Rubin. I don't know if you know Jerry Rubin, but you probably do. He's the founder of LexisNexis. Lexis, actually. He was actually a lawyer for the shipyard mobster investigations. Tough guy. He built it. And then he was so successful, he tried to take it over, so they fired him and kicked him. He was due to give a speech at the IA conference in Boston, and we were surprised that they actually let him speak. But the clue was, you can't speak about this, speak about anything else. So he spoke about freedom and information. He quoted the Roman philosophers, Stoic philosophers, Seneca, and at the end of the Roman Empire. And he said, in the end, they valued their security more than their freedom. And in the end, they lost it all, both of it, the security and their freedom. I think if you blow off the smoke, that's what you're up against right here. And you can't take it passively, you have to be active. And so what we've been doing for the last umpteen years is try to sponsor forums like this to get the word out and not be silent and stay put here. And the technique of a mock trial is based on the word power of crafting the argument, sharpening the information, so you don't have a free-for-all, you have a disciplined process. It's also kind of fun. So get the word out, because what's going on right now, if you take one more turn to the left, to the right, you got a very different country. And I used to be still involved in environmental struggle. That's why I started my first company. Paul Ehrlich, Population Bomb, was actually on my board. And he was predicting the population bang is going to take it out of you. And Club of Rome study. Because it didn't happen, because society evolved against this. But if you look at where we're right now, you're not too far. Tell me, how many gambits are you from early disaster? You can handle 5 disasters, 10 disasters. You can't handle every single frontier. Which why, 50 years ago, I got into the business with my first company, EIC, which I sold to Reed Elsevier. We actually had built this network. And we knew then what the problems were. And we did something about them, but it wasn't enough. So commitment is there, information is important. And to force the information into the public view. Because to me, information velocity is more powerful than anything. But when I was building the lobbying group in Washington, there was a guy named Jack Brooks, who was the head of all the powerful committees. He let this Texas draw. He said, money is like manure. He said, you spread it around, it does a lot of good. You keep it in one place, it kind of begins to smell. And I thought that was a metaphor for information, because if you spread it around, it does a lot of good. Keep it in one place, it just sits there. So you got to go after and get it out there, but make sure you cross-examine it. So we created a thing called Ecology Forum, where you check your guns at the door and get at the issue. You have more in common by working together than not. So that's why we're here to this extent. That's why we believe in this stuff. And my apologies for this tick, but I wouldn't let that stop me from talking to you. So thank you. Okay.
You want to introduce Peter?
No, don't introduce.
Okay.
By the way, just one quick thing. I'm not going to introduce Peter, but I'm going to have Sydney do it. Peter is my long-term friend and partner from about, how many years, Peter? 30, 40? Count.
Peter says, don't say 40.
Okay, all right. See you all.
All right, so literally the introduction is just, Peter, would you please come to the stage? Peter Porcino with Cowan, Liebowitz, and Latman. He is a long-time founding sponsor for the Genesys dinners. And as Jim mentioned, a long-term friend of mine too. And he's gonna speak about his views, what his company does, and then we'll touch base. Thanks, Peter.
I had assumed that this was going to be sort of a branding opportunity, but I could probably go around and talk to you each individually and be easier than speaking at length on my firm, and I'm not going to speak at length anyway. I want you to know that I voted for Jennifer. I'm unconstructed liberal, and the one question I didn't ask. It really was a great debate. I mean, I really enjoyed that. The one question I didn't ask was both of you, and I think Bob sort of glided over the term, was overclassification. And I think we could simplify the whole debate by saying, well, what should we be classifying and what shouldn't we be classifying? I think that's what it really came down to, but thank you for the debate. Sydney had suggested that I go through the history of the Genesys dinners and my relationship with Jim. That would take a little bit too long, and under the canons of ethics, there's a saying, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, so only so much I can say. I will acknowledge that the sale of EIC in 1988, thank you for reminding me, I handled that sale, so that goes back 31 years, and it's been a great ride, Jim. So I will just briefly mention that the Cowan, Liebowitz, and Latman is this intellectual property firm that has this international reputation. We keep getting awards from best lawyers and the Legal 500 and IP Stars, top trademark firms, top copyright firms, all of that, none of which I do. So I want to thank my partners and my colleagues for bringing that level of competence and legal professionalism to the firm. It's funny that Sydney was talking about the personal relationships, and I think that's really, that's something that I think my firm has maintained. As most of you know, some of you are lawyers, but even if you're not lawyers, dealing with lawyers over the last 30 or 40 years, 50 years, the practice has moved from a profession to a business, and that really hasn't always been to our clients' benefit. So I'm proud of the fact that our firm is really a people firm and still really emphasizes the relationship with our clients, and that's I think what makes us most successful and why I really enjoy practicing there. I've been there 41 years. I'm now, after the recent retirement of one of our secretaries, the longest serving employee at the firm, which doesn't make me happy. So, but it does, I actually should say, I've been there 41 years. I have partners who've been there 40 years, 39 years, 38 years. There's a whole coterie of people who've been there a very long time, because it really is a great place to work. And that's encouragement for you young associates who I brought here tonight to stay with us. So we have some brilliant young lawyers, and I'll just conclude by introducing the people that I brought along. First is my partner, Michelle McGregor, who practices in the intellectual property area, but also very much in privacy and e-commerce. She represents large and small clients in the data and publishing fields, as well as in fashion, finance, and food companies. And Michelle is about as tough as they come. Michelle? We have three associates, Dasha Chestukin, who is also in litigation and prosecution, enforcement, and anything else that clients need, she tells me. So I don't know exactly what that means, but it sounds good. She works in trademark, copyright, and other soft IP law. That means she doesn't do patent law, but we do have a patent practice. She works with startups, financial institutions, fashion brands, restaurants, and I got to find out what this is, Bitcoin mining machine manufacturers. All right. Emily Stein. Hi, Emily. She's worked in prosecution and enforcement for companies in various industries, including many whose presence is exclusively or mainly online. And she also handles UDRP and domain enforcement proceedings. And then finally, we have our newest associate, Ariana Sarfarazi. And Ariana, I guess, is in part being the newest associate, she's been thrown into virtually anything the firm does. So she's handling a wide range of legal matters. She does have a background. She worked at George Washington University, and she advised there on their information technology and data privacy. And she's doing a lot of regulatory matters now. So thank you, ladies, for joining me. And I hope you enjoy the dinner. And maybe we'll see you next year. Thank you.
All right, so thank you so much, Peter. So I'm going to bring Mike up here, back up here, Mike Nelson, and he is going to lead us in our closing forum. And this is sort of his call to action, and to hear from you guys, from select guests, some takeaway thoughts for all of us to take home. And in addition, he will also be making the verdict announcement. So, thanks, Mike.
I'm going to actually make this more informal. In the bios, you'll see that I've had many hats. The one that's not mentioned in my bio is that I was a professor of internet studies at Georgetown. I was their first visiting professor. I went there thinking I would do that for about a year and a half. I ended up doing it for 3.5 years, and I'm still affiliated with the Communications, Culture, and Technology program there. I'm going to start by telling you what you all want to hear, the verdict. 5 years in jail for Bob Lett. Seriously, I've been involved in many debates, many things like this. We've never had a debate that was this close. It was very lopsided. The vote going in was very lopsided. It was 13 in favor of the resolution that Ed Snowden had done good, and only 5 against the resolution. Several people changed their votes, but in the end, one more person voted with Jennifer. So you are you won the case. So if anybody didn't vote, you can still change the outcome. But I was telling someone earlier that just about 11 years ago, I was the Obama representative in the first ever presidential Twitter debate. This was organized as part of the Personal Democracy Forum. For 3 days, I argued with the McCain representative about innovation policy, telecommunications, e-government. At the time, only about 11,000 people were using Twitter, I think. But we sort of started Twitter politics. And the reason I say that is because today what I'm going to do is share my thoughts in 8 tweets and 4 limericks. And I will retweet this as a series of tweets using the hashtag GPD25 for Genesys Partners Dinner 25th. I'm going to give you the main points of the seminar I teach on what's shaping the internet. My students pay $6,000 for this and go to about 15 classes. You will get it in 4 minutes. And you won't have to do any reading, but I will recommend some reading. So anyway, let me start with just a few tweets. First off, one of the things I require my students to do is to read Micro Style, The Art of Writing Little. I know that lawyers don't do that in general, but this is an incredibly powerful book written by a linguist, and it tells you how to put together good tweets, good bullet points, and good headlines. So my first tweet is, we must not have a digital vision gap. When I worked at the White House, we did something very important. We wrote 3 reports on the national information infrastructure, the global information infrastructure, and a report called the Magaziner Report after Ira Magaziner that explained what e-commerce was going to be. In the 90s, we had a clear vision of what the internet could be, and everybody was kind of moving in the same direction. And so the vision gap we have today is that we do not have a clear consensus on what could happen if we keep pushing the technology forward and where we'll be in 10 years. When I worked at IBM, I had the good fortune of working with John Patrick, a very good friend of Jim's. John is the person who brought me into this process last year when I worked with Jim and John and Ken to organize last year's debate. John wrote a book called Net Attitude, and he outlined his vision for the next generation internet 15 years ago. He did it in a tweet. 7 words: fast, always on, everywhere, easy, natural, intelligent, trusted. Good news is we've accomplished a lot of that. The internet is a lot faster. It is a lot more reliable. And it's getting to be everywhere, or at least half the world is connected. We still have work to do, particularly to make it more trusted. But it's not too early to start thinking about a vision for what comes next. And I would argue that what comes next is the cloud of things. The internet's about moving bits. The cloud is about collecting the bits, processing the bits, and making them all work together. And that's what's different about this vision. We've got a lot of visions that have different services that don't really interact, a lot of pieces that don't fit. The cloud of things would actually bring together more than 4 or 5 billion people, and for each of those people, 10, 50, maybe 100 different devices. So you'd have this seamless, interconnected computer. Not a network, a computer that everybody could tap into. And the words that I use to describe that are trusted, efficient, encrypted, anonymous, verified, seamless, and easy. The same word that John used. Think about what could happen if we had this global, interconnected supercomputer providing everybody with unlimited storage, unlimited computing power, and making it all work together. That's a different world than what we have today. Unfortunately, there are other visions out there. Some people see this technology going to a place where we'll have a giant surveillance machine. Certain countries, certain companies are already designing that. We have hackers who are trying to bring down the whole system. We need to clearly define a vision of what could be if the pieces were fit together. Unfortunately, a lot of powerful forces are holding back progress. They're preventing us from bringing the pieces together. They're preventing us from using strong, effective encryption. In many cases, companies are trying to claim their little piece and are unwilling to work with others to make a seamless integration of the different services. And then we have the incumbents. In too many cases, companies have seen what has happened to some sectors of our economy, the music industry, the newspaper industry. They've seen how disruptive the internet was, and they're scared stiff of the cloud and the cloud of things. Somehow, we as a community have to come together and provide reasons to move forward. Otherwise, the lawyers will take their revenge. They will try to take control of this technology. I'm not talking about the lawyers in this room. I'm talking about people fighting for incumbents who are trying to stop progress. And right now, governments around the world are putting more and more regulations on the internet and on data, and those regulations will be used to stop progress. So as I say, I will put all this out in a series of tweets. I will challenge you all to come up with more adjectives, or better adjectives, or a better brand than cloud of things. I'd also challenge you to post on Twitter your ideas for topics we should cover in the future at this meeting. So use the hashtag Genesys 2020, pose questions that we need to tackle, and let's all figure out how to build the cloud of things. Let me now finish with a series of limericks. These are not really good limericks. Everyone knows that really good limericks are kind of dirty and pornographic even.
Do they scan?
Of course they scan. I'm a physicist, but I know how to rhyme. I can't rap, but anyway. There is a fine fellow named Jim. We're all quite lucky to know him. He's been working for years, giving blood, sweat, and tears, and that's why I've written this poem. Jim's been a digital teacher and a kind of tech preacher. Genesys is the name, and innovation's the game. That's not a bug, it's a feature. He fights for a cause that's critical and often gets quite political. He's fixed many sad laws, pointed out their bad flaws by being really, really analytical. So we all owe Jim a great deal. He's helped many make the future more real. Let us all raise a toast to our wonderful host for his vision and passion and zeal. Hear, hear. And now we have a little, I think Jim wants a rebuttal. in iambic pentameter.
Mark Walsh is in danger. By the way, Mark is in Nantucket right now. He wanted to be here, but he couldn't. So greetings from him.
Mark
Thank you.
typically sings for our dinner.
Yeah.
But he's replaced.
Well, there is a limerick about Nantucket, but I won't go there. So, at this point, I invite you, anybody who has a comment on my comments is fine to share that very quickly, but first I'm going to turn the microphone over to Harry Edelman, who's one of the pioneers of this dinner. He's been coming since the very start. Harry is the managing partner at Edelman Technology Partners. He's helped create more than a dozen companies and has been involved internationally on tech issues, and so I invite you, Harry, to give us a few thoughts on what we learned today, what you've learned in the past, and what you see for the future.
Does the mic work up there?
I think it would be better to do it here.
Okay. Greetings to everyone. Okay, you don't know me. I'm not on the program. I used to give speeches for Jim Kollegger 20, 30 years ago. I was the most quoted person in Wall Street for a dozen years, working for 3 of the 6 leading investment banks. And then the CEOs of 10 of the biggest companies in the world asked me to be their advisor and gave me money to manage a venture capital. I managed their money, helped them a lot besides the investments. I had a 27% IRR for over 20 years. I had 11 unicorns. I'm still actively involved at my age right now, doing deals pretty much every day. I already have done 2 deals today. I also am chairman of the China Investment Group. We just had 50 people come to my meeting to hear 2 great speakers talk about what's going on in China and Hong Kong. I'm doing a lot all the time. Now, I only have less than 5 minutes to talk to you, so I'm not going to spend the usual time I do in giving a keynote speech. So in the 3 or 4 minutes that I have, I will tell you that I'm going to give you a little story. You know about the emperor's new clothes? Okay, it was written about 600 years ago. And then Hans Christian Andersen wrote about it over 200 years ago, and there have been many iterations of it. So what happened is these weavers came to the emperor and said, we're going to make you great clothes. It'll be the wonder of the world. He said, oh, great, I love clothes. He said, and those who cannot see the clothes are idiots. They're unfit. Only jerks would not see the clothes. The emperor said, great. Well, meanwhile, these guys were working there invisibly with cloth and all that. They weren't making any clothes. But he didn't want to be like an idiot, so he said, fine, make the clothes. And he said, I really can't see them, but I'm not an idiot, so I'll pretend that they're making the clothes. So they're out there weaving every day with nothing. They're scam artists. So that's what happened. That's the story of the emperors not wearing any clothes. And you know what happened? They were parading down the street, and everybody didn't want to be known as unfit and an idiot, but one kid spoke up and said, the emperor is not wearing any clothes. Now, I'm going to bring that to Wall Street right now. So everyone in Wall Street's always in lockstep. So you have these companies like Uber, like Lyft, like WeWorks. You ever go to WeWorks? It's like wooden boxes that people are in. They're worth more than any of the host companies that they rent their little hovels out. It's the same with Uber. They're worth more than any other automobile company in the world. It's the same with Lyft. So that's what's going on right now. It's like the emperor's weavers. Everyone's got to fall in lockstep. All these companies are great. I don't agree. I don't agree. They're not great. They're all going to go out of business someday. Okay? That's what's going to happen. So I'm an analyst. I know how to analyze financials. I'm a CFA. I'm not taken aback by what's going on out there. That's my view. And I could prove it to you by going over financials. I mean, all these companies are losing more than $1 billion a year, $2 billion a year. They're losing $1 billion a quarter. Again, nobody cares. 35 years ago, when I worked at First Boston, I wrote a column, a fake column. It was called Dear Harry, Fake Questions. So I was way ahead of fake news. I was doing fake questions 35 years ago. I'd say, Dear Harry, how come Telex and all these companies are selling at such high prices? I said, it's simple. They're selling at a multiple of losses. So instead of looking at a PE of price earnings, you look at how many losses they have. That's what they're selling at. 20 times losses, 30 times losses. Join the fray. Everybody should buy these companies because they're selling at 20 and 30 times losses. I wrote that 35 years ago. I should pull that out right now and get it published. And I've had many articles published in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. I could write an article like that now. It would destroy those stocks. Because if you read what's going on, and I'm reading articles not by the Wall Street analysts, but by independent people in journals attacking those stocks that I'm talking about. Nobody reads those articles, okay? I'm reading them, and they're right. So I'm just telling you what's going on. And then finally, I'll tell you, I've had 11 unicorns. And not many people have had 11 unicorns. And I've got one now. They're going to revolutionize GPS systems. They're going to obsolete all the current GPS systems. He shows me a little circuit card, and he says, this circuit card, we make for $1,000. We sell it for $7,500. It replaces a $55 million satellite. He does not use satellites. He just uses terrestrial Wi-Fi. And the proof is in the pudding, which is what I like to look at. He's already signed up the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. Army, White Sands, Homeland Security, Caterpillar, Maersk. He's got 90 ports from Maersk. And all these container ships, they can't read inside the container ships very well. There's a lot of interference. He will get through. His GPS is down to a millionth of a second and a fraction of a centimeter. You'll be reading a lot about it in the future. No one knows about it. I've shown it to one investment bank. They love it. They're moving ahead on it. Okay, they haven't invested yet, but they will. So I only show it usually to one bank or one very wealthy person. I don't show it around to 30 or 40. One is enough if it's really good. So that's my take on investments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next we're going to go, sorry.
Harry, in effect, was the first corporate venture capital fund. And the companies were AT&T, Gulf, and Western, and in fact, the third one, first one. The second thing is he holds the record for parties. He has an island in Maine, off the coast of Maine, and has world-class reputation, clam bakes. And he's on number 26 or 27. So Harry, it's a lot of fun. Thank you.
But I think it's easier to get to Brooklyn than it is to get to Maine, so I'm glad we're here. Okay, so now somebody who is new to this community. Joy London is a lawyer, and she's the Director of International Development at the OSET Institute, which does election systems. So you have some things to share?
Sure. I'm the Associate General Counsel and Director of International Development for the Open Source Election Technology Institute. And we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that's dedicated to research and development in election technology. We like to say that we are not a think tank per se, but we are a do tank. We are do can. What we are doing is creating the actual software to create more verifiable, accurate, secure, and transparent election software. And we're working with U.S. Congress on drafting bills as well as state houses, and also working globally as well. Thank you.
And are you more pessimistic or optimistic?
About the stock market? Or
No, about elections. I mean, he wasn't very optimistic about the economy.
I'm not optimistic in terms of anything coming to fruition for the 2020 election. It's a long process, and also there's not much appetite in this country for securing elections. It's very, very partisan. I think there's actually more interest and appetite in Western democracies in Europe.
Okay, and so this one last invitation, if anybody else has a short comment or a quick couplet or a rhyme or a rap, here we go.
This is not a rap. This potentially could be a topic. Jim has done topics over the years about the large internet companies, but with all of the expertise in the room, I'm interested whether you think the FANG companies should be broken up, which is one of the current cries in the press.
I'm going to do a quick poll. How many people are with Elizabeth Warren and think we need to? FANG is Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google. Well, that's GAFM. That's the other acronym, which includes Microsoft. I guess the main question is whether Facebook and or Google. So let's do each one just as a little poll. We should turn off the camera in case anybody is working for any of these companies on retainer or otherwise. Okay, so how many people think it's a good idea to break up Google? 1, 2. Okay, 3, 4, 6. Okay. How many people think it's a good idea to break up Facebook? Oh, many more. Okay, so we've got, looks like, 10. And how many think Mark Zuckerberg should not own and control most of Facebook? Interesting. Okay, well, this is going to be one of the questions that might be asked next week during the debate. And I just hope that digital issues do rise to this level. And I would challenge all of you. I worked on the Clinton campaign, worked in the Clinton White House, very involved in the Obama campaign. It does matter if people start pushing, going to town halls, writing tweets, writing letters to the editor, and saying, why aren't they paying attention? And I think the issue we just talked about, a couple of the other issues like competition, the question of censorship, the question of how can we get the different components of the cloud to work together, these will have more impact on the future of society, the future of the global economy, than most of the topics that will be discussed next week. But nobody's asking. So push. Make these political issues. And luckily we have a couple candidates who are actually talking about these issues and are clued enough, actually aware enough of the issues to say something intelligent. So I'm an optimist, I'm a techno-optimist, and I'm just hopeful we can make it happen.
I would just like to say that we were impressively, last year, Titans on Trial covered this whole issue of the breakups before everybody else got to it. I'm trying to remember, what was the verdict last year, Mike?
Last year we had Terrell McSweeney, who had just left the Federal Trade Commission, arguing that more government action was needed to contain and control the tech titans. It wasn't a question about breakup, but it was more government intervention was needed. She was arguing against Robert Atkinson, who was the president of the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation, which is, for a lot of us, the best think tank anywhere on technology issues. And he was very much opposing more government intervention. That was a close vote. It wasn't as close as today's vote, but Rob lost. And it was surprising because a lot of us thought, okay, this is going to be a business community group. They're going to be opposed to government intervention. But I think a lot of the people in the room were investing in firms that might be in danger because of the growing power of the tech titans. And so that was where we ended up there. It's worth watching. The video is available. You can go back and just type Genesys Dinner 2018. And Jolie back there has filmed that. He's also filming this show. And tell your friends. Take care.
And I just want to also give a round of applause to the amazing team here at Brooklyn Historical Society. They're incredible. It's a beautiful venue. If you haven't explored the space, please come back. It's an incredible place. I would also like to thank my team, Miller in the back. She's wonderful at reception. Obviously, thank you to Jim for being the visionary that you are. And just to follow up on what Mike was just saying, it's so important. Doesn't matter how big the forum is, it's so important to be getting in the room with other people and talking about things in a room together and challenging what you think you believe. And I know Jim stands by that, and I've learned that from him. I just want to thank all of you so much for coming and participating, and I also want to thank our other sponsor, GACC, Dietmar Rigg, president here, also doing that important work for businesses in Germany and in America. So thank you guys so much. Feel free to continue filling up your plates. Feel free to continue getting wine. Feel free to continue speaking, but that's our program. Thank you guys. Have a good night.